You know the voice.
I will name him George, and I will hug him and pet him and squeeze him.
You know the vacant stare. And you absolutely know this line.
Well, which way did it go, George?
For decades, many have accepted that slow, lumbering hound as pure Looney Tunes invention. And yet, when audiences sat in theaters in 1940, they weren't just laughing at a dumb dog. And you also know the cousin of that voice, the crushing hug, the soft thing obsession, different bodies, same tragic farmhand underneath. Because they weren't just laughing at a giant dog, a dopey cat, or a yeti, they were laughing at a caricature. There's a persistent illusion when we talk about Golden Age animation. We like to think of the termite terrace animators as isolated geniuses, conjuring characters entirely out of thin air. But the reality requires a more nuanced historical confirmation. Warner Brothers cartoons were not a closed ecosystem. They were a vibrant, reactive cultural mirror. The directors of this era were young, they were irreverent, and they understood the fastest way to connect with an audience was through cultural shorthand. For Beaky Buzzard, that shorthand was radio, a ventriloquist dummy half the country already knew by voice. For this gag, it was something heavier. Why spend 5 minutes establishing a new character's personality when you can borrow an archetype that millions of Americans had already wept over in dark movie theaters? Which brings us to one of the most widespread silent handoffs in the Warner Brothers canon. How a devastating adult drama became cartoon house dialect for the next 20 years. This one actually started as a question from a fellow historian, and it unlocked a bigger trail than the catchphrase alone. To understand why, we have to look away from comedy entirely and turn to one of the most famous pieces of American literature of the 20th century, John Steinbeck's 1937 novella Of Mice and Men. The story follows two displaced ranch workers during the Great Depression. The brains of the operation is George Milton. The muscle is Lennie Small, a massive, physically imposing man with a developmental disability. Lennie is gentle, but he has an obsessive love with petting soft things, mice, puppies, rabbits, and tragically doesn't know his own immense strength. In 1939, Of Mice and Men was adapted into a major Hollywood film. George was played by Burgess Meredith. Lennie was played by Lon Chaney Jr. Chaney gave Lennie a very specific, heavy, lumbering cadence. Slow, well-meaning, constantly checking in with the friend who steers him. The American public was profoundly moved by this tragic tale of a man who accidentally destroyed what he loved. It was an Oscar-nominated film, anchored by prestige performance, still in the cultural bloodstream a year later. Tex Avery clocked something the prestige drama never intended. Lennie's cadence and helplessness were already a complete cartoon personality. No origin story required. Avery realized this tragic lumbering giant was the perfect identity shift for a cartoon buffoon. In the 1940 short of Fox and Hounds, he introduced Willoughby the dog, a dim-witted hunting hound whose mannerisms were a direct caricature of Chaney's Lennie. And side note, he was voiced by Tex Avery himself. Look at how he moves. The heavy plant of each step, the delayed blink, the jaw that hangs half a second too long. It's the posture of a man who means well and understands almost nothing, mapped onto rubber hose and fur. Willoughby constantly pesters the fox he's supposed to be hunting, blindly and asking which way he went, George. The audiences in 1940 knew exactly what Avery was referencing. This is peak cultural shorthand. No title card, no credit, no explanation. If you were in the theater, you were already in on the joke. But here's where the historical record gets really fascinating. This wasn't a one-off gag for Avery. The Lennie archetype was too useful to leave on the shelf. It became a running handoff, passed around the studio like a relay baton, echoing through shorts and across directors for the next 2 decades. Once the door was open, Lennie Small became house property. Bob Clampett found a way to put him inside Bugs Bunny himself. In the 1943 short Falling Hair, Bugs is terrorized by a gremlin. During the scuffle, the gremlin hits Bugs over the head with a heavy wrench. Of course, in traditional cartoon logic, a head injury means tweeting birds and spinning stars. Clampett relied on the shorthand instead. Bugs' eyes goes droopy, his jaw slacks, and Mel Blanc slips flawlessly into the heavy, dim-witted voice of Lennie. A traumatic brain injury turned Bugs Bunny into Lon Chaney Jr. for a brief, precise second.
Which way did he go, George? Which way did he go?
That way.
Well, gee, thanks a lot, George. Thanks a lot.
That's how baked in the reference already was. You could hit the studio's biggest star with a wrench and the audiences would finish the joke for you. When Avery left Warner Brothers for MGM, he actually took the gag with him. In 1946, he directed Lonesome Lenny, a massive slow-witted dog who greets Screwy Squirrel like an old ranch partner.
Gee, I sure am lonesome. I sure wish I had a little friend just for me to play with, just for me to pet and play with. Gee, I wish I had a little friend, you know.
Avery pushes the dark comedy to its limits. The short actually ends with Screwy getting completely crushed.
And pet you.
Same gentle giant, same soft thing hunger, different studio logo. And would you believe that Avery was so taken with this dynamic that afterwards he even formalized it entirely? His recurring MGM series, George and Jr., is Steinbeck's tragic pair repackaged as a cartoon franchise.
I done a bad thing.
Even director Robert Bob McKimson, who didn't just visit Lenny, he actually built whole shorts around him as well. In 1952, McKimson directed Hoppy-Go-Lucky, pairing the slick, scheming Sylvester with a massive dopey cat named Benny.
George is my friend.
Benny's entire existence is a feline Lenny Small, desperate to catch a mouse so he can hug him and squeeze him and pat him. And the dialogue is the gag eating its own tail. Benny won't stop calling Sylvester George, which by the way is one of my favourite Looney Tunes exchanges of all time.
Will you tell me about how we're going to catch mouses in the warehouse, George?
Okay, so we're gonna catch mouses in the warehouse. And stop calling me George. My name's Sylvester.
But I can't say Sylvester, George.
Okay, so I'm George.
McKimson liked the dynamic enough to bring Benny back the next year in Cattails for Two, this time paired with a cat who actually was named George.
But George, aren't we going to have our Mexican dinner, George?
Nah.
So the shorthand had finally circled all the way around on itself. He even couldn't resist a title page wink later in 1953 with a Foghorn short called Of Rice and Hen. Nothing to do with ranch hands. It's just referencing the book and nothing more. By that point, the novella wasn't a reference at the studio, it was a reflex. And all this leads to arguably the most well-known version of Lenny, and perhaps one most people think of, in 1961 with Chuck Jones's The Abominable Snow Rabbit. Bugs and Daffy burrow into the Himalayas and run into the legendary Abominable Snowman, who was retroactively given the name Hugo. But instead of a terrifying monster, Jones just gives us the ultimate Lenny Small caricature, voiced wonderfully by Mel Blanc.
Don't give it a second thought.
Oh boy, just what I always wanted, my own little bunny rabbit.
They really do make a charming couple.
And that's the full mutation of this archetype, so it goes from tragic farmhand
Gonna have a field of alfalfa.
For the rabbits. And I get to tend the rabbits.
Tend the rabbit.
to hunting hound
Yeah, another red one.
to cultural wallpaper.
My own little bunny rabbit.
So that's why tracing these cinematic origins is so vital, and it's the ultimate legacy of the cartoon Lenny. When Avery mapped the character onto a dog in 1940, and when Clampett and McKimson and Jones followed, they were executing sharp topical gags. They were speaking to an audience that were completely in on the joke. But time is ruthless to topicality. The immediate pop culture charge of the 1939 film faded. The original audiences who watched Lon Chaney Jr. on the silver screen are largely gone. But Hugo the Abominable Snowman, Willoughby the dog, Benny the cat, they're still here. And when you watch these cartoons today, you aren't missing the joke. The joke has just transformed. And it's another case of the caricature entirely outliving its subject. Warner Brothers didn't just borrow from a 1930s Great Depression tragedy, they accidentally preserved it. But let's not kid ourselves, as generations passed, less and less folks know of the original story. And now we have a case of millions of kids actually meeting Lenny Small on Saturday mornings first, once these cartoons eventually went to television. Completely disguised as a Yeti, or a giant cat, or a hunting dog who just couldn't stop asking for George. They took a heartbreaking literary giant, gave him fur, and made him immortal. So the next time you hear that slow lumbering voice ask, "Which way he went, George?" or watch a giant monster try to aggressively cuddle Daffy Duck, remember the tragic farmhand who gave him his soul. I'll leave you now with the clip of the film Tex Avery walked out of in 1939, convinced he had just seen a comedy character.
Like you can really see.
Where?
Right there. Can't you almost see?
Where,
Yeah.
George?
Keep looking. Just keep looking.
Oh, I'm looking, George. Oh, I'm looking.
It's gonna be nice there, Lenny. There ain't gonna be no trouble, no fights. There ain't gonna be nobody mean to nobody, steal from